Awesome. Welcome to show 12 of the Cyber Incision live stream. This is also known as Cutting into Cybersecurity and is our CISSP study group. Now, we're going to be digging into each domain of this every single week. And this week, well, I want to thank you for joining us. We have moved over into domain 2, and we are now on domain 2.1. So I got to do quick introductions. Looks like we've got some new people today, but for those of you who don't know us, my name is Joel Bork. I'm the host of Cutting into Cybersecurity and my wonderful co-host, Brandon Uzato. Welcome, buddy. Thanks so much for being on here and doing this with me.
Oh, thank you, Joel. It's pretty awesome. And we got to, we were down to domain 2.1, right? It's pretty awesome to go through all the work we had to do between, domain point 1 and all the information we covered. Now it's an uphill battle right now just to kind of get through the rest of the domains.
Yeah, well, domain 1 was one of the longest ones. So for those of you who made it, somebody gave like the green clapping hand. So go ahead and give yourselves a round of applause real quick. For those of you who have made it through domain 1, thanks for joining us, guys. It's been a blast, and we're excited to bring it home. Domain 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You ready?
Oh, yeah. I'm ready.
Awesome. Cool. Hit us off, Brandon. You got our 30-second to 2-minute recap of last week. Ready to go?
So we covered physical security, applicable controls, control assessments, and then today we're going to cover, identifying and classifying information assets.
That's it. Now, real quick, if you guys are in here, I wasn't kidding about clicking a thumbs up or a celebrate or this support thing, whatever it is. If you'll click one of those logos that I'm clicking on right now, in about 30 seconds ago you saw it, but if you'll click one of those so I can tell who is in here listening, that allows me to give you little shout outs as we go. So I see Sean is in here. Sean, welcome back. Let's see who else we got. I have Satwik. Thanks for joining us. Digital Forensic Cybersecurity. Paul MacGyver hopped in. Brian Anderson. We also have Christine Bacoy. Guys, thank you for joining us. I know it's election night. So I'm pretty sure though the polls are going to be open until they're going to be open until this closes, and that's when the fun starts. So thanks for joining us. Hopefully we can get you the information you need before all the excitement starts.
Now, just a little housekeeping, Joel. I know you're talking to people on LinkedIn. Don't forget we have people on Twitch and on YouTube as well. So if you guys are on here, just send us a quick note just to say where you're if you're watching on YouTube or if you're watching on Twitch, let us know. And also comment. Doesn't matter what platform you're on. What's your goal with the CISSP? Are you studying it? Are you using it day to day? Let us know, because it's good to kind of know where all our audience is looking at the CISSP and utilizing it through their day and activities, because it helps us, because I think we're doing it like daily now, right?
Yeah.
What do you think, Joel?
Yeah. Daily.
Well, I mean, using it, I'm having these conversations, right? Like we're going through a study session on Tuesday, and then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it seems like that's what I'm talking to most of my day.
Well, and let's be honest, like this last week's session, applicable controls and control assessments, like that's life in security, right? So it's true. Like everything we're talking about, it digs deep into everyday aspects of life. So hopefully we can help you pass the exam, but more importantly, this is to get you the knowledge you need to be a more effective cybersecurity professional. So, couple things. I know we touched on the quick recap. I want to touch on one of the main things from the last domain, and that was the risk management framework. So I'm going to throw this up real quick. Let's fade this in. So the risk management framework is a publication that provides guidelines for applying this to federal information systems. So that it's a 6-step RMF, includes security categorization, security control selection, security control implementation, security control assessment, and information system authorization, along with the monitoring. So I have a quick image real fast. Let me get that up for you guys so you guys can get the visual. And here it is. So what you're looking at is a process overview, right? So you start at the categorization. You have organizational inputs, whether it's from laws, directives, guidance, strategic goals and objectives, resource availability, and then supply chain considerations, right? So we've gone over a lot of that already. Step 2 is then select the security controls. Step 3 is implement. Step 4 is assess. Step 5 is authorize. And then step 6 is monitor. And you should be doing this. This should be a living, breathing thing as you go around through that risk management framework.
Exactly. No, and if you look at it, everything that you're doing, right? Mm-hmm. you're doing that daily through all your systems, everything you're doing with the technology, everything you're doing with your policies and procedures. You're always doing this.
Absolutely. Now I'm going to fade us back in real quick, but realize, guys, that this exam is going to be about primarily that RMF, but you're going to want to know what the other risk frameworks involve. This is including the factor analysis of information risk, Octave, and threat agent risk assessment, also nicknamed TARA or TARA. Whew.
Exactly.
All right.
A lot to cover.
Yeah.
A lot of acronyms to learn.
And that was just from last episode. So let's jump right in. I think we got a couple comments real quick. So guys, yeah, Christine says studying. Absolutely. That's why a lot of us are here, right? Studying, and once a week, just staying consistent, guys. That's what it's all about, because as long as you're consistent, in the end, you're going to achieve your final results. And that is the CISSP. So let's get this episode started.
Exactly. I think, did you want to start off with a question? I know you were mentioning this last time.
Fantastic. I think Christine and I think Salome, I think you guys were talking about how questions would be beneficial. So I picked a couple that are going to be related to today's session, and I wanted to ask these questions to you. And if you get all three right, should we stop the live stream? I'm just kidding. No, but if you get all three,
you're done. You can go take the test right now.
You're good. No, so let's go ahead and fade into question number one real quick. All right. So you are the security administrator for medical practice in a small town and are concerned about the type of information subject to the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, also known as HIPAA. Which one of the following best describes HIPAA-regulated information? So please, 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 in the comments, put the correct answer. Just type it in there, hit enter. Your options are PHI, PII, classified, and SBU. I'm blanking right now. Something but unclassified. It's not secret but unclassified. Why am I blanking right now? Here we go. Google real quick. SBU. It's not Southwest Baptist University. Sensitive but unclassified. There we go. And I didn't use Google. That just popped back to me. All right, here we go. Looks like Salome, first to it. PHI. Absolutely, you are right. Now, for those of you who don't know what PHI, right, everybody knows what PII is, and that's personally identifiable information. PHI is protected health information. And so everybody should know that. For HIPAA health information, that is exactly where you need to be. Looks like everybody is in consensus there. And I think that means we can move on to question number two. So you guys are 30% of the way there. Here we go. Question number two coming right up. Brandon, I'm going to let you read this one.
Yeah. So let me know when you have it up.
It's up.
Perfect. You're selecting an encryption algorithm for use in exchanging sensitive information over the internet. Which of the following algorithms would not be acceptable for use? First option, DES. Second, Blowfish. Third, RSA. Fourth, AES. So out of those options, which one is not acceptable? So let's see what the answers are.
Well, so I'm going to talk about how I know which one is not acceptable, right? So if anybody has done any work with encryption protocols, right, or done any domain scanning, you're going to see the available encryption protocols, right? And it looks like we already got some answers coming in. And so, yeah, so we have a couple. We have Sean said DES. I got Salome with Blowfish, and I have Southwick with Blowfish. Yep, Blowfish is the correct answer because DES is still, while it's an older encryption mechanism, it is one that is used over the internet. Blowfish is not. The more standard ones are then RSA and AES are the more up-to-date and current versions of encryption for the internet. So good job, guys. That is why we're doing this, right? So It's okay to get it wrong. It's not a big deal. It's just so you'll get it right in the future. All right. Last but not least, here we go. Question 8 here. You are configuring a web server and wish to enable a secure means of exchanging information with your customers. Which one of the following solutions is acceptable for exchanging credit card information or PCI data? All right.
So now I was joking around with Joel at the start that you probably shouldn't be transferring any of your credit card information online now.
Yeah. Well, but in reality, if you're going to purchase something online, right? If you're going through PayPal or you're, what is the encryption mechanism, the secure means of exchanging information, for credit card information in today's day and age? So I got to wait a second before these answers start coming in, but we did talk about the different means, right? And let's first and foremost throw HTTP right out the window. Right? That's a clear text protocol, not going to happen. And the way you're going to get through this exam, guys, is really narrowing it down to a couple answers that it could be, and then making your best educated guess, right? So
we're getting SSL as two answers so far.
Yep. So we'll wait another second. And we'll give it, go ahead.
So yeah, like you're saying, eliminate two. So you're going to get HTTP and FTP are going to be, they're plain text. So you're not going to want to transfer that. So those two, just scratch those out. Yep. So now the options really come down to SSL or TLS.
Yep. And it looks like we got two SSLs. Guys, this one is going to be TLS. So here's the deal. SSL, let me fade us back in real quick, Brandon.
Mm-hmm.
SSL, TLS 1.0 are not secure for credit card information anymore. TLS 1.2, 1.3 are going to be your core TLS versions that you'll use for credit card information. So the answer is transport layer security. SSL is no longer the means. Neither is FTP. FTP is the unencrypted file transfer protocol. SFTP is the new file transfer protocol over SSH. So that would be the more secure means of file transfer, but you wouldn't use that for card data. So correct answer, TLS. Well, cool. Not everybody got everything right. That means we still got a job here, right?
Do we get paid for this?
Do we get paid? No, sorry. I'm not cutting you a check. So maybe we should get a sponsor, though. You did talk about that early. So we'll come back to that another day. All right, guys. Well, cool. Let's get into it. These questions are going to be tricky, right? SSL, TLS, SFTP, who knows? That might be on there in an actual exam time, but it's good to know. So we'll start doing these more and more often. So real quick, hit that thumbs up button a few times. Did you like the questions? Should we do this at the beginning of every session moving forward? I'd love to hear your responses. Salome, she did a face palm. It's all good. That's what this is all about, right? I had to double check myself as well.
Well, actually, to be honest with you, I actually said SSL at the start until Joel gave me an education. I was like, well, it's secure socket layer. So isn't that secure? And he's like, nope.
Nope. And really, guys, I mean, Google it, right? SSL for credit. Let's SSL security. Let's see what Google says on it real quick. Google standard security for an encrypted link between a server and client, but it is outdated, right? So I'll dig it up. I know that is not the case. Its successor is TLS. There it is. Yep. All right.
And Sean was saying about the second question he actually added in. I would have said that DES is vulnerable to brute force because it uses 56-bit key.
Yeah, I didn't say it was a good encryption mechanism for the internet. It's just an option, right? Blowfish is not for... Blowfish is... Here we go. It's a symmetric block cipher that can be used in a drop-in replacement for DES or IDEA. So it actually can be used, but it hasn't been used in years and years and years. DES was I believe DES replaced Blowfish at a certain point in time. So it really is like DES, RSA, AES at this point in time. But I'll follow up on that after with you, Sean. So we'll figure that out. Once again, I grabbed these right before and dropped them in. But yeah, we'll circle back around. I'll get you more details on exactly why that is the case. Deal?
For sure.
All right.
Perfect.
Cool. Let's get going on this, guys. It is 7:14, and today is about identification and classification of assets, and then moving into how to secure them. So I'm going to let you kick it off, Brandon.
That's awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
One of the first steps in asset security is identifying and classifying information assets. Organizations often include classification definitions within a security policy. All right, personnel then label assets appropriately based on the security policy requirements. In this context, assets include sensitive data, the hardware used to process it, and the media used to hold it. So,
I have to admit I'm wrong. Real
for
quick.
Which?
For the
for
DES.
Blowfish?
Yeah, it says, though it suffers from weak key problems, no attack is known to be successful against Blowfish. DES is the older algorithm, and AES is the advanced algorithm.
Wah, wah,
Wah,
wah.
wah, wah. Look at me. Okay, so epic fail on my end, guys. I will circle back with that next week and we will get clarification on that so everybody can get that right moving forward. Deal?
Deal. Yeah.
Deal.
So let's make a note of that.
Yep, absolutely. Right? We're not perfect either, guys, but thanks for joining us. And Sean, thanks for calling my hiney out on that. So all right, moving forward though. So defining sensitive data, right? So sensitive data is any kind of information, whether it's public or unclassified. It could be confidential, proprietary, protected, classified. We went through some of these in a previous module, but I had a graphic that really describes this really well. So let me pull this up real quick, and I want to show this to you guys. It talks about what kind of data there is and what you use to protect them. And whether it's structured, unstructured, and then what's the use case, right? Is it simple? Is it complex, etc.? So you can see here that PHI, the one in the quiz below, is protected health information. It's going to be, you're going to want to tokenize fields. You're also going to want to encrypt the file there. PII, same thing. And then PCI is really the transfer of data. So this is the difference of, is it storage or is it in transit, right? And that's what this is showing you is PCI is typically always in transit. You're not allowed to store that for very long unless you're a bank. You have and very strict requirements of how it's stored. But cardholder data is very much verification of that data. It is done in transit. PII and PHI, on the other hand, looks like PHI is used in transit a significant amount, but then PHI is almost 50-50 according to this graphic.
Yeah, I think it would be more at rest.
That's what I would assume as well. This graphic shows, you got to think if you're sending your information to get a prescription, if you're transferring, medical records from one hospital to a surgery center, right? So I could see there is a mix of both for PHI.
But you kind of think about like the health network, and I'll just use this as hospitals here. A lot of time, if your data is in that central network,
yep,
it might be transferred from hospital to hospital, but still in that actual network.
Well, for example, here we have a Johns Hopkins set of hospitals here in the DMV, but then there are a few other surgery centers that are not related with the Hopkins Center, but are fantastic. Have different like for knee replacements, you wouldn't go through Hopkins. You might go to a different hospital center, and they would transfer your records and any right. So I see where there are both of those for PHI.
For sure.
Cool. All right. Touched on that.
So we're going to talk about personal identifiable information.
Yeah, we kind of hit on that already, though.
Right. But the main thing I wanted to cover in this one here is that National Institute of Standards Technology, NIST, special publication, SP 800-122 provides a more formal definition. So again, when you're looking at kind of implementation, you're looking at policies and procedures, that's good to make a note to review that as you're doing that, especially talking and referring to personal identifiable information.
Right. And it says, so any information about the individual maintained by an agency, right? So this is about really for potentially federal agencies. Maybe not. Let's dig in and find out. So this information can be used to distinguish or trace the individual's identities, such as name, social security number, date, place of birth, mother's maiden name, biometric records. Also, any information that is linked or linkable to an individual, such as medical, educational, financial, or employment. So it's interesting because within PII, there's some health and medical information that could be included in there.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's where it crosses over a little bit, right?
Right. So that's really interesting. And the key is that they have a responsibility to protect this PII, right? And this PII could be related to employees, to customers, to even relatives sometimes. I know for me, they're asking for emergency contacts, and it's including their address, their phone number, right? That's PII.
And something to note, like very important, many laws require organizations to notify individuals if a data breach results in a compromise of PII. And we're starting to see that a lot more now. And you can comment on that, Joel, in the States, New York, California, I think Ohio. A lot of them now are starting to have state laws now for data classification, data protection, and notification. I know for Canada, there's PIPEDA. And we follow GDPR too policies when it's, stuff that's from Europe. So a lot of data protection now is important. And when you're looking at if you're storing data, and us security professionals, people that are out there, have to understand when companies are looking at e-commerce or websites or any type of storage of data, where is it being stored? How's it being stored? And, is there a governance policy? You have to know that. So it's good to have this under your hat.
Absolutely. No, I agree. And it's interesting because, California is one of the front runners on this, but they're passing their own state laws that are even more stringent, right? And so following those, and, we're going to keep seeing this. When PII is breached, they have, by law, a responsibility to disclose that. The hard part is, we're seeing it more and more often that I even have there are even companies out there that they're focusing on the incident response and they're not releasing that they've been breached because they don't know to the extent, and they're having a hard time figuring that out. So right. I wonder sometimes how far that's gone and how many breaches have actually occurred that they don't even know it's happened. And that's a scary thought. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to jump down to PHI. So PHI is the protected health information. We touched on this. Health-related information can be related to a specific person in the U.S. The Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, is huge, mandates the protection of PHI, and if not, the fines are pretty astronomical. I mean, they're big. But HIPAA provides a very formal definition for what PHI includes. And this is that definition. So the health information means any information, whether it was spoken or recorded in any form of medium that
is created or received by a health care provider, health plan, public health authority, employer, life insurer, school or university, or healthcare clearinghouse.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so it's about who creates the data, right? If you create the data and it's about medical records, if you're sending it to those people, so there's some gray lines there, but when they create it and they store it, they're liable for it. And it relates to past, present, or future physical or mental health or condition of individuals.
So let's give a little context to that. So if you go to a massage, you go to massage, chiropractor, physiotherapist, you say you go get your dental records, and you're asking about a lot of health information. Now they're recording it, say it's either on an iPad or if it's on actually a clipboard and piece of paper, and they're storing that. That's what we're talking about. That's what it's referencing, right? And this could be hospital x-rays, you name it, all, more serious kind of medical intervention, but it could be in the sense of even, day-to-day kind of treatment, that you're getting from, like I said, massage therapist, physiotherapist, anything along that line. They're recording a lot of times PHI information. Do you have any allergies? Do you have any food sensitivities? Do you have any, pre-existing conditions that you're dealing with? All that information is being recorded.
Yeah. Well, and here's the interesting part. Some people think that, HIPAA only relates to medical care providers like doctors or hospitals, and those are the only ones that need to protect the PHI. Couldn't be further from the truth, right? HIPAA is defining PHI much more broadly. So they're also saying that any employer that provides or supplements healthcare policies and collects or handles that PHI, it's common for those organizations to provide, supplemental healthcare, et cetera. So that HIPAA is also going to apply to a large portion of organizations within the U.S. And I think that's going to be key. There are going to be questions about HIPAA on this exam. It's not just doctors' offices and hospitals, right? It's employers across the United States now who are responsible for abiding by HIPAA.
For sure.
You want to read the comment?
Yeah, from Sean?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Sean was saying in many cases, if a company encrypts their data, they are exempt from breach notification laws. Interesting. I'd like to kind of do, and Sean, can you elaborate on that? Because from my understanding, if someone gets breached, there's now, this is kind of from Canada, if they get breached, doesn't matter their protocols they have in place, they still have to notify the individuals, if it's in clients, employees, subcontractors, of the breach.
Yeah, so I'm reading it right now, and the guidance to render unsecured protected health information unusable, unreadable, undecipherable, you have to use valid encryption processes, and this includes the use of TLS implementations.
Okay.
And you also would have to use SSL VPNs. It also talks about the PHI that it's originally recorded on is destroyed in a few certain ways. So very interesting and great comment comment, Sean. I think that's very relevant.
Yeah, and I'd like to see that. Like, I mean, we're all kind of learning this. I would wonder to see if they're exempt. If they encrypt it, are they exempt from notifying their actual people that have been breached?
Yeah, so I just posted the link for hhs.gov, and that's health information privacy. And it's, it's right there, plain and simple. So please, guys, pull that up, keep that as a resource. Like, you're right. I don't know if that will be on the exam. I wonder what the date of is this or when that was changed. But it looks like it's all throughout the NIST special publications. So it's there. Great comment.
Good to know.
Well, let's head into proprietary data.
That's a tongue twister for you?
Yeah.
Okay, so proprietary data refers to any data that helps an organization maintain a competitive edge. It could be software code it developed, technical plans for products, internal processes, intellectual property, or trade secrets. If competitors are able to access the proprietary data, it can seriously affect the primary mission of any organization.
Yeah, and I think it's important. So we learned about like copyrights and patents and trade secret laws, and they provide a level of protection. But it's not always enough, right? I mean, you got to think criminals are not going to pay attention to copyrights. They're not going to pay attention to patents or any law. They're already breaking the law if they're hacking into systems. So similarly, foreign entities is a big one, right? They don't abide by our laws either. So China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, they don't give two blinks about any of our data privacy laws. So I don't know. Thoughts on that, Brandon?
Well, I mean, there's no extradition laws, right? So
Right.
if they do it, it doesn't affect them, right, legally. So I mean, this is where you got state kind of attacks and things along that line, and the espionage. I mean, like these are high level kind of cyber crimes that you were talking about, but it's pretty frequent. I mean, we hear this in in the cybersecurity world that these are happening in the back, every day, monthly, yearly. That these companies are getting compromised, organizations are getting compromised.
Mm-hmm. No, you're absolutely right. Now it was interesting. So in December of 2016, right, the DHS and FBI released a joint analysis report of Russian malicious cyber activity. So the report focused on APT-28 and APT-29, Fancy Bear, Cozy Bear. So if you guys don't know, Russian threat actors or APT groups are named Bear. It was funny. One of my coworkers did at one of our conferences, they did a game, and it was decide whether this is a Pokemon name or an APT name. And people got it wrong all kinds. It was kind of funny. Anyways, nice. Moving on. These groups primarily targeted the U.S. government entities and others involved in politics. Now, I've already seen news outlets saying that foreign entities were targeting both Democratic and Republican parties in multiple states. So very relevant to what we're going to see tonight. Election security has been hot off the press. But cybersecurity firms such as CrowdStrike, SecureWorks, ThreatConnect, and FireEye Mandiant have all indicated that APT-28 is sponsored by Russian governments and has probably been seen operating since the mid-2000s. Now, it's worth notifying the different, the frequently identified the same APT groups with different names, right? So thumbs up if you guys have heard of Dragos. All right, so I'm going to spam this real quick. There we go. Get a couple thumbs up. So Dragos has started creating threat intelligence reports, and they're creating their own names too. So sometimes it's hard to bring all these together, right? You have, PawnStorm, Sednit, Sophacy Group, SAR Team, Threat Group 4127. Like everybody has their own name for these threat actors because attribution is difficult. But remember, if at all possible, APT groups, that's what they're going to be categorized under. And they're trying to standardize that, right? So you can really track it. But these days, tracking it back down to their core is difficult. Have you heard any differently, Brandon?
No, I mean, as you know, like the forensics investigation, how many times they hop is phenomenal, right?
So there was recently a script posted open source, but it basically lets you, as you're brute forcing something, hop through different Tor nodes. Right, so boom, 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 boom. As soon as it stops you, you bounce a new IP off a different Tor node. Boom, 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 boom. As soon as it gives you a 401, 404, gets you a new IP off a different Tor node. Switzerland, France, Italy. How do you trace that back to the original actor? You can't.
Right.
Not if they're good.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Cool.
So they're saying here in 2014, FireEye, a U.S. network security company, purchased a mandate for about $1 billion. However, you can still access a mandate APT1 report online by searching for mandate APT1, and you can view the joint report by searching for jar-16-202968 Grizzly Step.
Say that 3 times fast.
There you go.
All right. But let's get in. So what kind of data are these advanced threat actors after? Well, right now it's very much PHI data, right? I think it's no doubt in our minds that these advanced threat actors are after COVID vaccine related information, right? The person who owns that vaccine is going to make a ton of money. These companies are already selling rights to hundreds of millions of vaccine for billions of dollars. Where there's financial gain to be had, these APT level actors are after it. So let's talk about data classes real quick. It was part of domain 2.1, so we didn't want to skip over it completely, but here is that infographic for you. So once again, this is our pyramid. We touched on it before. Class 0 is going to be unclassified or no public damage would occur. Class 1 is going to be confidential or sensitive damage could occur. Class 2, secret and serious damage could occur if this was leaked. And then you have top secret, right? This is exceptionally grave damage. This is things like China stealing our weapons, right? They stole the plans for our stealth fighters. Like, this is serious grave damage that could occur when this data is leaked.
Now, one thing just to remind people, if you draw a line straight down the middle, you got government and military, and the other one is non-government classification. So just so you can understand where the classifications you're working with. If you're working on corporations, organizations, you're working more on the right. If you're working with government, you're working on the left.
Great point. Awesome. So there's your quick tidbit and touch up on data classification. Remember, although some sources refer to sensitive information as any data that isn't public or unclassified, many organizations use sensitive as a label, right? So in other words, sensitive information might mean one thing in one organization and something totally different in another. For the CISSP exam, remember that sensitive information typically refers to any information that isn't public or unclassified. I want to repeat myself. So real quick, let's throw up that image one more time. For the CISSP exam, remember that sensitive information typically refers to any information that isn't public or unclassified. So I'm going to put this comment in there. Okay, so that is in the chat. So anything you can see public or unclassified is class 0. Sensitive is anything above that. How did I explain that well?
Yeah,
and I threw it in there. So
let's ask these guys. Do you guys understand? Give us a thumbs up if that makes sense.
Hopefully we got it right, but there's like these little quirks to this exam that, like, gosh, they should be easy to get if we drive this home, right? Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, let's keep going, and we'll get those thumbs up here in about 30 seconds once the delay gets to our crew.
Awesome. So do you want to go to defining asset classification?
Let's do it. So asset classification should match those data classifications, right? So in other words, if a computer is processing top secret data, the computer should be classified as a top secret asset. Similarly, if media such as internal or external drives hold top secret data, that media should also be classified top secret, right? Pretty common sense there. But it's common to use clear markings on the hardware assets so that personnel are reminded that it can be used to process or store assets. All right, I'm getting some thumbs up. So there we go. I think we drove it home and got it pretty well. So
good.
Same thing. What about a sensitive asset? On the CISSP exam, it's going to be anything that's not unclassified or public is a sensitive asset. Cool. All right. So now we've got our data classifications, we've got our data, we've got our assets. They all follow the same classification ranks. Now you have to determine your security controls, right? So after you've defined that, it's important to define the security requirements that identify these controls that you're going to implement based on security requirements.
Exactly. And then management then decides on data security policies dictating that the use of specific security controls to protect data in these categories. The policy will likely address data stored in files, in databases, on servers, including email servers, on user servers, sent via email, and stored in the cloud. And cloud's going to be huge right now.
Yeah, you're right. And you got to realize, like, it's easy to think you're being secure until you come up against one of these FedRAMP pen test teams and they're testing your data in transit, your data on-prem. You know, once they get access to your cluster, like, how are you storing the data at rest, right? In all different aspects, not just the database, but how is it being stored at rest on the pods? How is it being stored? You know, so it's interesting to see that, man, it's so multifaceted when it comes to encryption and security of data.
Right. And I mean, like you said, and just so you guys know, you got to think like a hacker. You got to think of how they can breach and kind of going through all those layers.
That's next week. That's threat modeling.
Hey, got to give them a little golden nugget.
Good stuff, though, right? So remember, guys, encoding is not encryption, right? This is another key. So like base 32 encoding, while it makes a jumbled string, it can be decoded with a simple decoder. Encryption is very different. So remember, encoding is not encryption. Encryption is not encoding. And you have to encrypt your data. The standard right now is AES 256. So let me post that in here. Let's get that in the notes. Beautiful. So that is it. And I have a table on here. I wish I could have, it spans more than one page, so I couldn't really get a good screenshot of it. But we're talking about securing email data, right? So a good example is securing email data. If you have confidential proprietary emails, right, that needs to stay the highest level of protection at your organization, you need to encrypt that with AES 256. So real quick, question for you guys. What encryption mechanism are you guys using at your organization to encrypt emails? Brandon?
Yeah, so let them comment. I know we're using Office 365 and then the tools.
So we're using Virtru, right? So we have Gmail or G Suite, and we have Virtru. So you basically click the little button if it's confidential, and it's going to take a second. It'll encrypt your entire email before you send it out. So that's my example of encryption. I'd love to hear from the rest of the group. What are you guys using at your organization? O365, Virtru, something else. I'd love to see it. Looks like Sean's putting in something cool about the Illinois General Assembly website about business transaction. They say personal information means either the following: an individual's first name or first initial, last name in combination with any of the following data elements. When either name or the data elements are not encrypted or redacted, or are encrypted or redacted, but the keys to unencrypt or unredact or otherwise read the name of the data elements have been acquired without authorization through the breach of security. That was a loaded statement. A little confusing. But yeah, so it makes sense, right? It's first name, first initial, last name along, and I think he's going to be posting the elements here shortly. Now, sorry, back to email security. Sean, I'll circle back around once you've posted the rest, but confidential, you need to be able to encrypt it. If it's private, you should still, if it includes PII, PHI, you should still encrypt it. And then also you should be using DKIM. Have you guys heard of DKIM? So this is standard. After you send your first email to somebody, it's going to be exchanging keys in the background. And I got a cool graphic for this as well. Let me get this real quick. So DKIM security is basically a signature on your email. So if you're using DKIM, basically, you're sending the email with a key attached to it. The email service provider will then check that key against the DNS server. And if it matches, it will be sent to the inbox. And if it's not, it's going to end up in the spam. So DKIM should be used even for just sensitive data. So you'll have encryption. You have it is a lesser means. It's not a full-blown encryption, right? But it is a way to sign your email so you know that the person who sent it is the person you believe sent it, right? So there's no man in the middle occurring.
Right now, let's take a step back. I know we have to talk about confidential and proprietary. Something about email attachments. One of the things they talk about is email attachments remain encrypted except when viewed Email can only be sent to recipients within the organization. So this is talking about confidential and proprietary. And emails can only be opened and viewed by recipients. Forward emails cannot be opened. So again, they're looking at the layers of security to this, right?
Yeah, right. And the attachments are huge, especially with like cloud storage now, right? Because they're basically uploading attachments to cloud storage, encrypting them at rest, encrypting it in transit, as you download it, etc. But you can upload gigs and gigs now at this point and send them as attachments.
Exactly.
All right, cool. Looks like everybody's using O365.
Wow. Okay.
Now, are you guys? Yeah, I mean, for encryption purposes, that's awesome. For phishing protection, that's another story. It's hard to put. For me, I just can't put all my eggs in one basket. What's your saying in Canada again? That's similar?
It's similar. It's the same thing.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you guys had a fun one. Okay.
Don't put all your Timmies in one basket. I don't know.
There you go. Don't put all my beers in one cooler. Okay. Moving on. So we had a couple examples. Let's take this example real quick. So although it's possible to meet all the requirements in that table above that we just talked about, they require implementing other solutions, right? Let's take an example of a guy named Bolden James. He sells several products that organizations can use to automate the tasks. Users apply relevant labels such as confidential, private, sensitive, public to emails before sending them. These emails are going to pass through a DLP or data loss prevention server that is going to detect the label, apply the required protections, and then forward them on. Now, of course, he's not the only organization that creates and sells DLP software. Other companies that provide similar DLP solutions include Titus and Spirion. Is Bolden James a real company? They must be. I've never heard of them.
Oh,
have you guys heard of Bolden James? Yeah, throw that in Google real quick. See what comes back.
Yeah, Bolden James, data classification, secure messaging.
There you go. Sounds like it automates the whole process for you. But
founded since 1985, so we should know that.
We should know that. So Bolden James is a DLP, and then Titus and Spirion. God, I haven't heard of either of those, right? But everybody's using O365 to do it. So it looks like these, Microsoft, Gmail does it, right? They've got built-in plugins to encrypt stuff. So we're coming a long ways.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Also, identity and access management are going to help these as well.
Right, exactly. And any type of data that an organization wants to protect needs similar security definitions. For example, organizations would define requirements for data stored on an asset such as server, data backup stored on site and off-site, and then proprietary data.
Yep, you got it. All right. Any final comments on this, guys? Feel free, jump in. Looks like Sean said there's much, much more, but that's basically the gist of breach notification exceptions. And I don't know. For me personally, if it's encrypted, if you encrypt your data at rest, you don't have to notify people of a breach. There's something there that grinds me wrong.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to see if Sean had any more information on that, because from my understanding, especially if it's a massive or larger breach, the media gets you have to notify people. There's just a whole instant response.
Well, don't you have to prove that? Who's the authority? What if you're using TLS 1.0 to encrypt your, it didn't say what version of TLS, right? So it's if you just say, I don't have to report it because I encrypted my data at rest using this protocol. Yeah, we'll come back to that. I'm going to dig in, Sean. I promise I'm going to do my due diligence this week. All right. Now, it's interesting because we get to talk about WannaCry ransomware, and this is dealing with all kinds of data. It's interesting. I'm trying to see how this exactly ties in, but let's jump into it, and it should be there. So if you guys remember, WannaCry, it happened started May 12th, 2017, spread to 150 countries, really fast, infected 300,000 computers and servers, crippled hospitals, public utilities, large organizations, along with regular users. As with most ransomware attacks, WannaCry encrypted the data, demanded its victims pay a ransom of $300 to $600.
Well, even though it spread quickly and infected so many computers, it wasn't a success for the criminals. Reports indicated the number of ransoms paid was relatively small compared to the number of systems infected. The good news here is that most organizations are learning the value of their data.
Okay, so there's the tie-in, right? So this was a wake-up call to organizations who had all of their data locked up because they stored it all in the same place, right? Or something similar to that. Now, even if they get hit by ransomware, if they have a reliable backup, it could allow them to restore it. But as you guys are seeing, if you've heard of Maze ransomware, right, these guys are pivoting throughout the environment, laterally moving. They're encrypting data, exfilling it before they do. And if you don't pay the ransom, they start releasing it publicly online. So
Right.
it's getting nasty, but this is why you need to classify your data, store it different ways.
Right.
Now,
And then let's just put a point to that where you're saying about data and then going through that. Even you have to check your forensics and your backups, right? Some people say, okay, well, I have backups, I'm fine. I've heard and through experience here, sometimes the malware is actually in the backups.
Yeah. Yeah, they do. They'll put persistence in your backups, right? They'll find your backup servers and do so. Mm-hmm. Or they were already in your server. You took a backup of, yeah, it can be messy.
Right.
All right. Now, if you guys haven't read the WannaCry story, the Wired magazine released online the confessions of Marcus Hutchins, the hacker who saved the internet. 22-year-old guy, right? It says single-handedly put a stop to WannaCry, and then he was promptly arrested by FBI. Now, it's interesting because I've read this and I kind of watched this unfold. Have you guys heard of Marcus Hutchins?
Yeah, I've heard.
Right. So I'm curious to see if you guys have heard of Marcus Hutchins. His story, also known as Malware Tech, was kind of his handle. He became famous like overnight. He basically discovered the kill switch on WannaCry and basically flipped the kill switch so that it couldn't reach communications. And it was basically a single domain name. And if WannaCry was on the internet for a lot longer, they would have made a ton more money. But he was quick about it. So. Did you hear that Maze says they were shutting down? No, I didn't hear that, Sean. The Maze ransomware group has been terrorizing all kinds of organizations. So that is interesting news. Thank you for the share there. Yeah, good news in my opinion, but I have no doubt somebody else will take their place. All right, how are we doing on time? We got about 10 minutes left?
10 minutes left, and then we're understanding data states.
Yeah, so this comes back to data at rest, data in motion, right? So media systems such as hard drives, thumb drives, storage area networks or SANs, right? So if you got, really it's a bunch of hard drives in a server rack, or backup tapes, right? So that's at rest.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then you got data in transit, right? Sometimes called data in motion, is any data transmitted over the network. This includes data transmitted over an internal network using wired or wireless methods and data transmitted over public networks such as the internet.
You got it. Now, data in use refers to data in memory, right? So you have data at rest, data in transit, data at use. Data at rest, cold storage. Data in transit, on the move. Data in use is stored in memory, so it's more volatile, but it's still on your device, right? So it's used while an application is using it because an application isn't going to be able to process encrypted data at rest, right? So it has to pull it out of encryption, load it into memory. The application then can use it once it's decrypted.
Right, exactly. And the best way to protect the confidentiality of data is to use strong encryption protocols discussed later, as we discussed in this chapter, right, or in this session. Additional strong authentication authorization controls help prevent unauthorized access.
Yeah, so consider like a web app, right? It's going to retrieve the credit card data for quick access. Then it's going to, right, for access and reuse, right? So it will use that with the user's permission for the e-commerce transaction. The credit card data is then stored on a separate database server and is protected while at rest, while in motion, and while at use. And that comes back to PCI data protection.
Exactly. And then you got the database administrators take steps to encrypt sensitive data stored on the database server, data at rest. For example, they would encrypt columns holding sensitive data such as credit card data. Additionally, they would implement strong authentication and authorization controls to prevent unauthorized entities from accessing the database.
Yeah, and it's not just encryption at storage, right? They're using firewalls and proxies and DMZs, and when it's at rest, it's stored behind behind the DMZ in a protected enclave. Like there's much more to it than this, but this is a big piece.
Right. And then also, yeah, monitoring tools and things like that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Now, real quick. So I want to be sure we touch on your point, right? So there are several steps, right? So for example, when the database management system retrieves and decrypts the data and formats it in the way that the web app can read it, the database server is then going to, use a transport encryption algorithm. So you'll have an algorithm at rest, you'll have an encryption algorithm in transit, and it will encrypt it before it leaves that enclave and heads out to its location. This ensures that it arrives in a secure fashion and comes back to our CIA triad, right?
Exactly.
Boom. Cool. Now, once it's received at the location, this comes back to talking about it being in memory, but it's basically going to store the data in a memory buffer while it's using to authorize the transaction. Then once the web app no longer needs it, it takes steps to purge the memory buffers to ensure that there's no residual data. All right. And then we got a couple final checks, and we're going to give you guys back some time. We hope you guys voted, and go watch the elections. Finish this off, Brandon.
Okay, so the last point is just a note is that the identity theft resource center routinely tracks data breaches. The post reports through the website www.idtheftcenter.org. And if Joel, if we want to put that in the comments, that are free to anyone. In 2017, they tracked more than 1,300 data breaches, exposing more than 174 million known records. Unfortunately, the number of records exposed by many of these breaches is not known to the public. This follows a consistent trend of more data breaches every year, and the most of these data breaches were caused by internal attackers.
Listen to these
external attackers.
Listen to these stats. 1 million child identity theft victims. 16.7 total identity theft victims, 1.6 billion records exposed since 2005, and they've been tracking all of it. So cool resource to check out. They also have support if you need help and have been breached.
Yep, perfect.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much. Sean, thanks for sticking with us. Guys, thanks for sticking with us through the end. Claps for you guys all around. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you for joining us. This is episode 12 of Cutting into Cybersecurity. You guys are fantastic. Brian? Brandon?
Oh, no. Thank you so much. I mean, hope you guys are getting a lot of great information. Depending on where you guys are watching this, Twitch, YouTube, LinkedIn, wherever that is. Thank you so much. Comment below, share this with a colleague or friend that's studying for the CISSP. The more people we can get out to contribute and just, study with us, the more we all learn.
Yeah, absolutely. Brandon, you are fantastic. Thank you for joining me on this, guys. And I appreciate you guys. Please, if there's anything else you think we can add to this training as we go through it, we're only in domain 2.1, so there's time to catch up if you guys have people you want to start studying with. But if there's anything else you think of that we can bring to this class, please let us know online in our next session or offline via LinkedIn. Thanks so much, guys, and have a great rest of your night.